There's a flag right behind you.
Is the camera up?
Yeah.
All right. Please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, welcome everyone to our late starting meeting tonight. Don't really have any announcements. I want to thank everyone, especially Joe Archino and Larry Kapler for helping organize tonight's dedication of Madam C.J. Walker Plaza. It's great to have so many people turning out. And Olivia Bundles, Madam C.J. Walker's great granddaughter there, was I think especially nice, and it was just great. It was a great event in Irvington, and it's going to be great to have that plaza there forever. I didn't have any other announcements, and nobody else did. I didn't have any correspondence either, so we can go right to the meat of everything. So I will go right to public comments. Please. Sure.
Do I need to speak in a microphone or no?
I think you just talk from there.
Okay. My name is David Rubin, live on Circle Drive. I have an issue, it's a personal issue, but I think it has applicability for the village at large. So I'm going to explain my own issue and then tell you what my question is. Hopefully you can resolve it. It's around the enforcement of fencing laws in the village. A year ago, I filed all sorts of forms. I spent hundreds of dollars. I went for the architectural review board and got approval to have a fence built on my property, which I did, and that was fine. Several months ago, however, my neighbor put up a fence without applying, without paying any fees, without going before the architectural review board. He put up a fence. I had a violation. I had the building department come and they issued a violation, which they then told me subsequently is barely enforceable. So I've asked a bunch of different groups, whether it's the ARB or the building department or whoever. I've tried to get the answer to my question, which is what am I supposed to do? On what basis is this person allowed to put up a fence and I'm not? And that's why I want to understand how the village deals with the fencing laws.
I don't know if we're prepared to talk about it tonight.
I can speak quickly about this.
Sure.
You know, under our ordinance, a violation was issued upon a complaint that the fence was installed without a permit. There's not much after that we can do. It's not a life safety issue for prosecution. If it was a life safety issue, we would hire a prosecutor and we would chase a prosecution.
So they have to basically pay their fee or like what?
So unfortunately, at this time, they can't sell the house. They can't refinance the house with a violation sitting on them. That's the punishment. If we were to hire a prosecutor and bring it to court, we'd spend a lot of money and we're not sure that we would get the end result would be anything satisfying.
Well, as an example, the fence clearly violates the rules that state that a fence has to have the attractive side face the neighbors. And that's not the way this fence was constructed. So based on things that I've heard in the past, I've always thought that the village can't take action, but I guess what Mr. Marin is saying is that they really can. So I spent hundreds of dollars and I could have just put up a fence and nothing would have happened to me. And these people spent nothing, put up an illegal fence and they get away with it. So I don't understand what the equity is. And that's what I'm trying to understand. And I guess I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's where I am. Okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe we can follow up and see if we have to change the law or what we have to do to strengthen it.
Yeah, and I think executive session for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Otherwise, we will move on to consent agenda. Anyone have any questions on the consent agenda? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to approve. If I can have a second. All in favor? Now, update on the firehouse expansion project design. Thanks for waiting for us here, and I'm sure you're anxious to get going. Thank you.
It's a little awkward here. I had to stand so you guys can all see. But so just as a recap, I'm John Sullivan, architect, principal of Sullivan Architecture. My associate Carl Ackerman. So I guess it was last fall when we met with the board and began the process of looking at the expansion of this building. And so where we are today is what we're here for, is to just show you what we're up to. And if need be, get some comment from you as to where we are. So this drawing over here is a combination of site plan and street, sort of just massing diagram. So I'll point to it diagrammatically, but this line you see here, which aligns right through here, the property line of the firehouse. This is an uncolored schematic of the front of the firehouse. This is the lot adjacent to it, where there's a building on it today. And this is the next lot with a building on it today. To the right of it, pretty faintly, you can see here, what you see in the gray here is the EMS building off the corner. So what we've done from our last discussion is look at expanding the firehouse into a combination, as it says on the drawing, fire department headquarters and a municipal facility. And combining what we can into this expansion that includes other village activities and uses. So we're waiting for a survey. I know that the villages has a survey preparing one, so we haven't really further with the plan of the site. Okay, so this is a floor plan of the building, obviously larger scale. And it's color coded here because, again, following these lines, this is the property line today, and this is the firehouse as we know it today. Okay, we revised the design. This is very similar to what we discussed and showed previously, and when we worked with the guys with the fire department as to how to address the internal operations of their uses. So it combines what presently our bays here into three larger bays. And of course, there's a small piece of the existing building right here that will be raised in favor of expanding it all the way to the back. The building today ends here. We're expanding it in the rear as well. So you'll see this graphically a little better in a moment. But what we've really done here is added this portion of these two properties into introducing other uses in this building. This area in here, I'm pointing to, for example, would be the village meeting room, courtroom. It can easily sit in that space, 100 people. And we have it shown here in a particular graphic, a layout of, like you might have to tonight, you know, rows of these. This might be a dais here, whether it's with the court, for the board, or any of your boards. There's area in the back here specifically dedicated for the court, judge's chamber, conference room, etc. When we get further into this project later, we will get a consultant to help us with the judicial requirements for operating this as a court. Everything from, like, you know, a holding cell for anybody, as well as like offices and so on. The real interesting part here is that this becomes the entrance to this building, the pedestrian entrance into the building. We've been able to separate this as a lobby that feeds right into the courtroom, meeting room. There are stairs, elevators. The areas dedicated for the fire department remain. In fact, they have their own separate entrance into their apparatus floor here. They also can use the building internally here in this through here. So we really pick up quite a bit of space. The existing building on all floors is about 6,600 square feet. The addition is almost 17,000 square feet. The combined building will be about 23,000 square feet of space. Quite an expansion from the 6,600 that exist there today. This is,
Mr. Sullivan, I just said, you said it's 6,600 now and the expanded firehouse area goes to 17,000?
the whole building.
The whole building.
The expanded areas, which includes the fire department as
Right.
well as this. As I mentioned before, for example, this whole leg across the back of the building here is expanded. And in this area, used predominantly for the fire department. Right, so we really haven't altered the fire department's plan from what we looked at previously. Yes, we tweaked it a bit as a result of having the combination of elevators and stairs and massage them, but their functional spaces remain the same. Am I right, Carl?
Yes.
Carl's right on. This is this happens to be the second floor of the building. And you see that the area up in here is shown for just municipal offices. For example, this is 1,700 square feet of space. We just designated some office layouts in here. We haven't really dived into with staff as to who really sits where or what office are there, but it's a placeholder within. Okay, so like, for example, there windows to be served for the public might come up here if they're getting a permit or something. So there's a common conference room. This is kind of interesting. This is a large, you'll see in a moment, open space with potentially a lot of glass here. Becomes a really nice viewing area. I mean, viewing to Main Street, parades, etc. So, then of course we have a lower level. The lower level, again, this is all expanded area on the building. So you can see, and we discussed this previously, the blue area is the police firing range, practice range. We had that on here before. That's in the basement of the rear of the building. And on this side over here, we've been able to accommodate, just as diagrammatically, 2 offices in here. Maybe we relocate, for example, this is 1,000 square feet that could very well easily be the Parks Department. This in here is approximately almost 600 square feet. That could be the building department, DPW department. They have common lunchrooms, common bathrooms. Again, the vertical circulation. It really does become, frankly, in all intents and purposes, a municipal facility.
What doesn't go into this space?
It doesn't
Like,
go
what departments don't go into this,
Well,
into the building?
police, other than their firing range.
And maybe water department.
Maybe the water department.
There might be room there, might not be. We're running, it's getting close.
Right, we haven't really.
We haven't really finalized who sits where and how many seats we need. And where we'll be when we merge the offices upstairs, we'll have clerk, administrator, building department. So there might be room because ours and staff. But,
Right.
we're saving copiers, we're saving lots of little things too, monthly bills. So it's exciting to see because the second floor really does combine a lot of stuff. And if there's room, the water department will move up as well.
Right, yeah, this
So
is.
the police department needs a lot of square footage. It's amazing what they need.
Yeah, you can see, we did some diagrammatic layouts of desk areas and for, the public to use this and to come in and, as we said, pick the permits, for example, this might be the administrator's office in the back. Doesn't matter, right now. This all, is like, we can massage this around, however we want to do it later. Placeholders, because we're utilizing these 2 pieces of property in addition to the existing firehouse site.
For the lower level offices, are there any windows or anything? Or this is totally new?
I'm sorry.
For the lower level, are there any windows or light, or are these completely underground?
We haven't dived into the design of that facade right here. Okay,
No, but on the
Basement level.
on the basement level.
The grade is falling away.
So the basement's almost fully below grade.
Right.
But what the basement has, which the upstairs don't have, they have a side entrance, so they have their own entrance as well as the main entrance. So there might be some room for some windows and light there in the hallway. And we were just discussing, we haven't really dove into the code requirements for buildings on property lines.
Right.
So, which is having windows is not allowed, but there's ways to get that, which we're not there yet.
Even if it was, this is the rear.
Yeah, you're looking at it, you're looking at the side
EMS
building.
building.
Yeah,
So we can do it. One of the things to consider, and we talked about this, is to keep perhaps a lot of glass, along the frontier to borrow light from the public space, internally even. The more we get into designing spaces for municipal facilities. And we frankly just recently have been working on the village of Elmsford. On doing a pretty substantial addition onto that village hall as well. Internally, it's open plan. And it's something that we could talk to each of the departments about it. You know, there are certain offices, for example, Larry's office probably needs to be, you know, more of a private space. But the rest of it, as much as we can keep it open, which gives you flexibility. Later on, if there are certain adjustments, their staffing and whatever, we're not ripping walls down. It's an open plan, and it can be acoustically dealt with as well. So, but for the moment, we put these in just to get a handle on, do we have enough space in here? Do we have enough storage space? Is there common, as Larry, as Ed mentioned, common copy rooms and file rooms? That's how we want to think about and preserving, you know, as much space as we can, utilizing it the best that we can. Let us show you what we think this may look like. That's the front elevation. Obviously, to the left, you see colored of the firehouse with its new 4 doors. This is the more large bay for the ladder piece that was in that we're going to propose to put in here. Maybe flip it over, Carl, because the perspective, we put together a couple of perspectives for it as well. Gives you an idea of what this massing looks like. I mentioned a moment ago about that second floor open space and how that could be pretty nice area there for sense of presence to the streetscape. So we haven't really designated or have decided yet, like what are all the materials on this. Again, it's much of it's a massing diagram than anything. I like the idea, frankly, of the firehouse having a different presence than the other portion of the building. I like the potential use of it being very contextual, so it doesn't look like one massive structure. But we're moving along with this, and we're you know, working with both Larry and with Ed and obviously with you, and we'll continue to massage this plan along.
I guess a question for Larry. What would the plan for the current village hall be? Like if this, because this looks like it would move everything except PD. And I guess the theater would still be in the theater. So the first floor now, I know we talked about a potential past entrance to the theater. And I guess if we move the meeting room over here, the old meeting room can become part of the police department.
I think that's open for discussion.
So we have some plans from years ago. Yep. Some from Sullivan, some from others. We haven't really gotten into that yet. Quite frankly, last time we met, we weren't sure we were moving over there. So we got that. The envision is the theater taking over and sharing the space with the rec for the first floor. The big picture, hopefully my dream, I won't be here for it probably, but is to rebuild the staircases. You walk in town hall and you go up the stairs to the rotunda, they go up both left and right. We're actually fighting with the HVAC contractors not to use that space now for a possibility later.
Kind of bring it back to what it was.
Bring it back to what it was.
Grand entrance.
Right. You know, I think it's a longer conversation.
But we can see, talking about the first floor where the lobby, where we just were. I mean, we think that's a very attractive lobby for the theater.
Yeah, box office, where Katie's office
all the
is.
various things that you need for a theater. We're not designing that theater. That's not in John's contract to
Right.
design the theater.
Yeah.
But I think we can open up that space.
Plus the multi-purpose rooms, the building department, which is actually connected to the Tiffany room, Larry's office, the hallway, the rest of the clerk's office. And all the activity spaces that the parks can use during the day and the theater can use at night.
Right, rehearsal space,
So
possibly.
this would allow us to get rid of the IK Benjamin Center.
Well, yeah, that's our plan. We obviously need to make sure that all of this works in the new building. You know, we think there's enough space there to make it work, and they'll have
We'll have something next
what
week.
we
for
think
that.
is a better situation than they have now, you know, as opposed to the old building they have. So that's where we're going to, that's what we're shooting for.
Are there any uses, department solutions you were looking for that this doesn't accomplish now? Like the
we're in the preliminary stages, so we haven't really like gotten into the nitty gritty. We think we're fine. I mean, the envision is to share space, share offices and consolidate. I think the rec department gets more square footage out of the whole package from the building we're in now, with the two buildings. You know, services in that building are in need of repair already. So why repair it twice? Like I said, we're hoping to get the water department here. That's the only squeeze we haven't gotten yet. And if there's room, there might be room in the DPW building, especially with mergers in the future. Staffing. I mean, I don't see why they can't be. It's just a desk, and they have 600 square feet to work with. Right now, their whole office isn't 200 square feet.
Right.
So if you leave the locker rooms down there and you move just the offices up there, plus I think it gives a better service to the community if everything's in one building. Right now, if you need DPW, you've got to leave a message or go down there. So I think everything being in one building is a better public service as well.
Yeah, and I think too, when I look at this originally, you know, I'm almost overwhelmed by the scale of it. And not so much from the building itself, but from the financial part of it. But then I've been to Tarrytown, you know, like they were able to figure something out and make this all work. And to me, there's a part of me that thinks the more you're able to accomplish in this space, almost that easier, not easier, but the more realistic to find the funding. You know, maybe even easier than just the fire department. You know, and I think there's obviously a lot more moving parts and a lot more planning that's involved, but I think in some ways it makes it more obtainable because it accomplishes more, if that makes sense.
The shooting range alone, it cleans up an issue you've had for a dozen years. Public issue to get rid of the outdoor shooting range that people don't want. I mean, it's just a little touch of the project.
Right.
But it's a big deal to a lot of people in town to get rid of the outdoor shooting range.
You know, Larry, if they're all helpful, I just throw this out there, and as you know, from years ago, we still have plans of the village hall, that's diagrammatically, right? We could take a look at like the first floor and work with you.
No, I'm gonna just do an overlay real quick.
You did it, yeah.
No, I just haven't gotten to it yet. I know what I want to do. I even have the plan pulled out.
I think it's been lobbying me for a job.
15 months.
So, but I just shared it,
Yeah, no,
you know, to the mayor's question about what happens in there. I mean, if it's at all helpful, we could put together a quick graphic, you know, that.
Look, our goal is to eliminate the need for an addition to town hall to accommodate a new entrance for the theater. That was a project that was presented to you 5+ years ago. I think you liked what you saw. It was probably a little more expensive than you thought it might be. But the goal of this is to eliminate that need in the future. You'll have a much more elegant lobby space. Not that I'm criticizing the previous design at all, but it's an addition to an historic building. So that's difficult, you know, and not even on your property, by the way, on the school property. So it's a complicated thing. This is much more elegant. We can, in the course of doing this, the building can become fully ADA compliant, which is right now. For those of you who were at the ceremony today, you realize it very clearly that there's a large flight of stairs for people to get in. So we'll fix that. You know, there'll be an elevator in the right place, you know, that lands on the right floors. So yeah, the goal here is to eliminate the need for that project. So with that project off the table and this one replacing it, we still believe, and you know, we're working on numbers obviously, but we still believe that the projects done separately, so firehouse expansion and theater entrance construction combined are similar to cost of what you're looking at here. They're in the ballpark, and it's just done more correctly, we think.
So can I ask, any time frame that I know you guys are waiting for a survey, and I'm assuming that you can't move a lot beyond where we are right now without a survey. We've made a fairly large, you know, investment in trying to get what we've called shovel-ready plan, or at least have the answers. Right, at least have answers to questions that the public might have, and I don't sense that we're there yet.
No, definitely not yet.
So what's the time frame for us moving forward?
Sure, so working backwards, like we always have to do, with the referendum, which I believe you stated is where you want to get to. We would need to commit, and we'll nail down the exact dates, but we would need to commit to the referendum and its language by sometime in August, if I recall correctly, in terms of getting the language over to the county. Going back from that, the language only comes about because you pass a bond resolution to borrow the money. You would probably do that, a month ahead of time. And immediately when you pass the bond resolution, you would immediately commit it to going to referendum. So now we're back into July. So really, that mid-June timeframe is the timeframe where we need to have a solid cost estimate with as many of these questions answered as possible. Does every question have to be answered? I think we said from the beginning that when you committed to that architectural contract with Mr. Sullivan's firm, we are only going to go as far as we need to in the design in order to get a solid cost estimate. So it's not shovel ready because that's way too far. We're gonna go as far as we need to in the design development in order to get a good solid cost estimate, and that is going to be done. We had this conversation literally this afternoon. That's going to be done by mid-June. We've got to hit that date, otherwise you can't get to the referendum.
Right, good, okay.
And but then, by the way, I will say that even though we're hitting a date of August to get it on a referendum, you have the entire fall to hold very public meetings with lots of questions and answers and lots of discussions about financing and design and construction logistics, all the questions that you may get from the community, as you should. But you have the entire fall to do that. So it's not a matter of, we have to have everything with a bow on it by August.
Right.
So it's, that makes sense?
Yeah.
And we're good with that. As Larry said, we spoke about this today. So essentially, we have, your professional team has March, April, May. Pull together enough of a package to get some good solid budgets from reputable construction management companies who we rely upon anymore, as opposed to us estimating it. And it's a very volatile market, but in any event. So that's our game plan, and we think that we can beat it. We will be there. So and this way you'll be able to see this better.
So I have a couple of questions. So the last time we talked about one of those properties, the expansion properties, we already own.
Yes.
And so part of this planning, do we know for sure that we will be able to acquire that other property?
Right, so I've had two conversations with the owner of the property that we need to acquire. So it's not a secret, we had a public meeting about this back in September, so there's no secrets. I think that there's an understanding and a willingness to come to an agreement to sell that property, but we have to be careful about how that gets structured because it also needs to be contingent on the referendum. So there's some tricky timing issues and legal issues with that, and we'll be undertaking that over the course of the next months, But I don't, and I'm not trying to be in anyone's face about this, but as you know, we always have the power of eminent domain to clearly qualify. You can talk with our attorney about that, but that's a last resort. I don't think it's going to come to that. But I don't think that it's going to be something that will lead to a project that can't get done because the owner is unwilling to sell. You know what I mean? Often you see it. I just saw recently online. You often see pictures of the little old house that's been there forever, and the person refused to sell, so they couldn't build the mall the way they wanted, so they built the mall around it. This isn't a private project; this is a public project, so that's not going to happen.
And I think it was important for us to at least
Yeah.
bring this to this level for you, so that you guys can see the potential value
Yeah.
in what you gain by taking this sliver right here, what that contributes to the building.
And my other question is, and I know this has come up in public meetings, and I have a particular person who's brings this up to me a lot, but the system for the alarm, for the fire alarm, that system will continue. Is that going to be disruptive to, to have a building of people working with the alarm? Is that, how often does that alarm go on?
Well, the alarm's on town hall right now, so.
Oh, it's on town hall, okay.
Actually, we're probably less effective than the properties just around.
I'm gonna have a copy of that, that's not there.
Theater around it as an announcement before the shows that the performance may have to pause if the.
Yeah, we're trying to build a big building, we're not trying to solve that problem.
Right.
This is a lot easier, to be honest.
The building's easier.
So that's where we are with the.
Sorry.
It's a pretty big development in the last time now.
Yeah.
Literally, it's bigger.
But the courtroom really developed into a very nice space, 100 people. But you're really got like 30, 40 here something now.
Yeah.
I think that was a big benefit on the part.
Agreed.
I mean, everything else is, everything else is great, but the courtroom is a real boom.
So just a quick word about money. So obviously, the cost estimate. But from back in September, when we did talk about some of the numbers and how the, again, very conceptual, how the numbers could lay out. I don't believe, John, you can confirm this, but I don't believe that they've encountered anything along the way that would be alarming, to those numbers so far. Now, obviously, there's still time and development to be done, but as of now, everything's kind of tracking the way we thought, so.
It is, it's on par with where we talked previously. Absent additional property acquisitions, but to build a building, including contingency, soft costs, is where we were before. There's no glaring notes.
What's that number?
It was around 15 million.
That's construction, and then there's property acquisition, some other things. So the bottom line number that we had talked about back in September was 17 million. Again, if you look at the relationship between this 17 million and, the 11 plus 6 of the theater and the firehouse separately, they're still in the same relationship, still in the same ballpark.
So that is 17 though, just for this building, right? And then we don't have, I think this is what you said, we don't quite yet know. I think it would be helpful if we had some ballpark for the village, the village hall project.
Right.
And
But it's
Yeah.
15 for this building, and we accounted for, again, a very just conceptual square footage. Let's throw a number in there, so as a placeholder for work that would need to be done in Village Hall.
okay,
So it's
it includes the work in village hall
yes,
and the
Just
theater.
basics, but
it's a bit basics, yeah. I mean, obviously, you'll have to have a public discussion about how that space gets designed and the best way to do
Short staircases probably weren't in there, but.
it's not in there.
it.
Yeah,
There's probably a few elements that have to be looked at, but again, these are very broad numbers, but I know there was a big concern that was expressed at the meeting in September, which is, that there was some general agreement that this project looked interesting to you, but if it's twice as much, it's probably not so interesting. We get that, and we're not twice as much. We're still tracking to where we were talking back in September.
and then I guess my other question really has to do with the police department, right? So they obviously are only included to the extent of that, the firing range. But what plans, I guess, we may have for the police department going forward and thinking about. But I think I would like to think about sort of those costs across the board, like if we were upgrading the fire, right, the firehouse and village offices, and then also what are our plans, just thinking about them in the short to medium term for the police department.
So I would say that the only thing that we know is that in order to accommodate a police department, you would need the property that the ambulance corps is on. I think that's probably pretty obvious. Okay. We obviously haven't had any, serious discussions about that. I mean, but I think it's a pretty obvious from the pictures that you're seeing. We believe that, and Ed, you can correct me, that property and the topography associated with that property would accommodate a structure that would accommodate the police department and hopefully EMS or some
Yeah,
satellite form of
the
EMS.
police departments need a lot of square footage, believe you wouldn't believe how much square footage. But we believe there's enough room to put an EMS garage, a police garage, a only one floor police department, maybe administrative on the second floor, along with the EMS having administrative on the second floor, and still have a lot of room left over for something else or nothing. I think it'd be a two-story building, so it'd be one story less than what we're showing now, or it could be a three-story building with an event space up top. I think it's way too far out to get that far into the thought process. How big do you want this mass? How big do you want the spoke? Do you want to push it in a little bit? Do you want to make it taller, smaller? But you need 2 floors to do those two facilities. And there's more than enough room. And then, the parking would be on the side, so it wouldn't be in the front on Main Street. There's a lot of easy stuff. We've already had a survey done when we acquired the first parcel, and the elevation works out perfectly for the basement and South Ferris Street. Yeah, for
The floors all line up.
the floors all line up, but we really spent a lot of time on the last project you looked at to make sure we had all these availables, that we weren't getting ourselves into a bind by just building the building and then saying, oh, we can't build a police station or an ambulance corps because it doesn't work in height. We spent a lot of time on heights. If you look at the first drawings, the section, the first drawing you ever saw, we had the sidewalk. I mean, we really spent a lot of time making sure that we're not boxed into a corner that we know of.
The way I would summarize it is that we're not trying to actively push a project like you suggested, like moving the police department and all that. What we want to do is make sure that somewhere down the road, 5-10 years from now, when the need arises and someone decides that that police department shouldn't be where it is, that you have this as an option and the flexibility to do it. So that someone doesn't turn around and say, boy, it would have been perfect there, but it doesn't fit. We think it does fit. It could fit. But is it a project with a capital P? No, it definitely is not. But we did our homework to at least know that it can happen. But a lot of things have to happen in order for that. Not the least of which is money, but not the least of which is you don't own that property and you have EMS and there's another party involved. So it's a whole complicated series of things. But 10 years from now, it may not be so complicated. It may be absolutely necessary that you move that police department and relocate them and have the flexibility to do it.
But Arlene, I'm not sure if I understood you correctly, but I thought you were also asking to get an idea of the cost of changes that would be made to the police department where it is now in terms of expansion, in terms of trying to get an overall cost
Yeah.
of the project,
Yeah.
of this project, plus 2 million for work inside, plus what you think would need to be done in the existing police office. I mean,
Yeah,
it would
and that's
probably
the-
help to have, lockers for women, locker rooms for women.
So we believe there's some old drawings I'll share with Larry, then we'll send them out to you guys, of ideas that were thrown over the years. We'd have to see what the police department, see what they want, but there is a budget, maybe not for full bathroom locker rooms, but locker rooms in that space. If it's decided that the courtroom should be part of the police station, there's enough room to do a lot of things there. And locker rooms are fine. It's when you start doing bathrooms with slab on grades in old buildings, it's doable, it just becomes a little bit more complicated. That budget for a couple partitions if that's the route you go, I don't, because the other thought was maybe making the courtroom something else for the theater.
Right.
So I didn't want to like into it.
And/or recreation.
And recreation, like a multi-purpose room instead of so without getting into that design and thought process, because this is a lot of work right now, a budget was set aside to just do some partitioning and some other work in there without getting grand stairs, a new elevator through the detectives room, through my office, right up into the center hallway. I mean, there's thoughts about where stuff should go and how it should get there, but we haven't done that project yet. I mean, that's,
that is my question. So that's,
this project is
Yeah.
an immense taken on, and
so my question, right, so what, my question is exactly what you're getting at, not like the idea of expanding onto this space, which I
Yeah.
understand is a capital P project. I guess if I'm, if I'm thinking about that building of what's gonna happen in Village Hall when, everything moves over and what are the costs to like make that building useful, right? And what kinds of things would be done there? And I like that you said the women's locker room, right? Because now we don't have 0 women or 1 woman, we have 2 women and presumably we would have more women, police officers. So, and I mean, I guess I've been to the police station and it's, it clearly looks like it could use some
It's inadequate.
sprucing up. So I guess that's what I'm thinking of, like what are those projects look like? Because those to me are short to medium term projects, not this like putting the police department with the ambulance force. So yeah, that's what I'm really.
Yeah, so we can definitely put a finer point to John's, as John suggested, we can put a finer point on some of the renovation work that needs to be done in Village Hall. And at least have a sharper number there.
Yeah,
We'll get
As
a-
accurate as this.
we can get you a square foot number on the petitions.
Yeah.
And a locker room. Just to talk about, not designing it or getting into that heavy a deal right now. There's a lot of square footage in the trustee meeting room for offices, not for meeting rooms. So, but we weren't tasked with assigning that space to a police department or to the theater or to the rec. So
Yeah.
we haven't gotten there yet.
yeah, so I guess the when I'm thinking of costs, what I'm sort of thinking what this project is, right? So if we do all of this and then clearly Village Hall, we're gonna do something, it's not gonna just be like everyone's moving out and nothing's gonna happen there. So I think when people want to know what the cost is, they're gonna want to know the cost of this plus the cost of what is Village Hall going to become.
Right.
What does that look like and how much is that gonna cost? I think is to be part of this capital P project, right?
Yeah, so we had included placeholder as a number in the budget, so it's not like this is coming from 0.
Yeah.
So that number was there. What it includes, whether it's police department space or some other space for theater, we didn't make those decisions yet. But we have construction per square foot with kind of broad numbers in there, so at least we have it accounted for. Can it fluctuate? Of course. We want that whole. The beauty of the project is that you're combining 2 big projects that the board wanted into one very large project and hopefully equaling out. So we want to make sure that we account for all the costs that could happen for the combined project, which includes opening up this lobby for the theater. That clearly is part of it.
Yeah,
So-
and I mean, I would think too, just for the public, like, we were talking referendum, like that's sort of how they're gonna think about it,
Sure.
right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, we fully intend to have that. We'll just get we'll drill down a little bit further to see what types of spaces might be in there and we can cost it out a little better.
Anything else for now? Well, it's an exciting project for sure.
Yeah, so we were not planning on having John come back. He needs to get his work done, not standing in meetings, but we're not planning on having him come back till really closer to the end when we get down to some cost numbers and I mean, unless you want an update more quickly, but I don't, we thought this was a good midway point of his work.
We just need to get our full team engaged here so that we can pull together proper budgets, structural engineer, for example, and how we're building this. You mentioned site before, trustee, that when we get that, we'll take a look at any utility connections that need to happen. The game plan really is, if this becomes kind of a master plan, certainly can be tweaked, certainly internally at a later date, but it's more than adequate for us to confirm what the cost of this project will be, which is what the game plan is. Well, Barry, we can certainly come back in a month and update the board if that's their pleasure, then it's fine.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. If there's not much new to look at, but there's a
Right.
lot of stuff being done behind the scenes, then it doesn't really make too much sense at a public meeting, but If anyone ever has any questions on the board level, I'm happy to get them answered for you, of course.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for your flexibility.
Yeah, thanks for waiting at the senior center. I got the Archino didn't have food for it again.
Yeah, why does Archino?
What's going on? I don't think I've ever been at the senior center. I haven't had a spread.
I have no comment.
You already do your bunch of
So after the public hearing.
We spoke earlier, Joe, and I have to, it's for me. We realized it was 22 years ago when we did this building.
22 years.
22 years ago, John was our architect when we decided to commit this facility to the senior program, and the design of the addition, plus everything in the building. So he's got a good track record.
Getting him back in pickleball court.
Yeah. I haven't asked him about a pickleball.
Actually, before we move on to the budget workshop, there was a late addition of a proposed probationary firefighter. So we're going to do that now. I'd like to propose a probationary member of the Irvington Fire Company, Ryan Karen. I'll make a motion if I got a second. Second, all in favor? Aye. Now, for the budget workshop, we'll start with the fire department. It's a big fire department team tonight. So I don't know if you guys want to wait till they clear out and sit up there if you want.
Whatever's easier for you, whatever questions you have, we're here for you.
I'm a little bit about my,
I think they're fine there.
you can probably stay there. Probably, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. People can't hear you at home as well from there, like wherever you go to. Yeah. So I think we have fire department budget, which was an overall decrease of about $13,000.
There's really no changes besides the building inspector, excuse me, the fire inspector is being taken over by the building department.
That's it.
Currently now,
So that'll be
Yeah.
correct.
go over the building.
And then there was a small increase in our cancer benefit.
Yeah.
More members qualified for, the key to that is you have to get them fit tested with an SCBA mask and for 5 consecutive years, and they're eligible for that benefit. So I've been urging our members to make sure, even if they're not interior right now, get fit tested, get yourself covered. A lot of these guys didn't have that back in the day, and they put in 20, 30 years of interior firefighting. So we just want to make sure they're covered as well. So
Absolutely.
And then also included in that 4,100 number is our general liability insurance that the estimates it's gonna increase about 9% across the board. So this is the fire department's portion of that's included in there.
Yeah, so I mean, I think overall decrease of $13,000 and the meetings keep you here much longer.
no, the only thing I just want to add, and there's no change to it, and I use the public forum for this, is the Irvington Boat Club lease. We're hoping to use that space in the future. Right now, just put it in the public forum, we're looking at hopefully Memorial Day for that. We're gonna wait till there's any progress. I mean,
We haven't seen anything yet.
correct, well, I'm getting there. So, we're not gonna do any work on our fireboat right now, because it does need some refurbishments, especially with its electrical system. We're not gonna put any work to that and waste any money on that until we see some progress as far as some sort of screw or wood down there. So that's sort of where we're at with that. We're hoping and praying we can protect our area in the summer, so we just wanted to throw that out there.
You all know that the dock was, so they keep their fireboat at the dock of the Irvington Boat Club, but the dock was destroyed by a breakaway barge from the Tappan Zee Bridge construction. And that it took a long time for them to.
3.5 years for litigation.
The insurance companies and whatnot, and so I guess there's finally a recovery and now they're trying to move forward.
There, apparently there's some sort of settlement, but we're just hoping we can, originally, 2 years ago, we were docking our boat in Tarrytown. It just, we felt as chiefs, it just wasn't safe for our members to be responding across town lines for something that could be just so minuscule. We'd rather have it right here. So, if we can get to our waters quickly and safely as possible. So that's sort of where we're at. I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, I feel like every time we hear one good piece of information, it's like 2 bad ones. But
Yeah. So I mean,
it just seems like we're close.
I don't know, but there seems to be a little light at the end of the tunnel. So.
It was not a dream.
Yeah.
Okay, well, great, and thanks for hanging out.
And your budget includes the possibility of.
Yes, that lease, I believe it was 5,700.
Right, and that I know you guys have included it every year.
We're just including it because we're waiting, just hopefully we can use it.
Right. And you have enough money for training and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean. The villages have been very supportive of the parties if we need more money from a certain area and stuff like that, but. You know. We come pretty close to like the maintenance of vehicles and stuff like that. We did just work out a new contract with another company for that, so hopefully we should be in line for what we used at Buscon, so.
Great. Well,
Thanks.
thanks for everything you guys do, and
Thank you.
thanks for hanging out tonight.
No problem.
I understand this is your last budget.
Yes, I hand it over to Jimmy, April 17th, whatever your second meeting in April is,
The new guy?
then I'm done.
Old guy?
The new old, you get the new old.
Well, thanks very much, Chief.
Thank you, guys.
You can get the vote with them.
The chief holding it up, right?
Yeah, so, well, thank
All
you
right, thanks
guys.
very much. Sorry you had to wait.
Oh, no worries.
Appreciate it. Now on to the building department. Revised.
Revised, yeah, sorry. So
What I have here is right.
it might be.
Okay.
He has a bigger piece of crap.
No, I want to see if you go out for.
I was gonna say.
So it's bigger but smaller.
It's bigger than last year's. Not what.
It's like those monthly project meetings when that list of events.
So you asked for, a report monthly to see what we're doing. This takes about 2 days, so.
Thank you.
We get it. So this is a few years that I've been here on everything. So it has,
I can't.
Oh my
22
God.
years.
So I think it's 20 so line. There's I can read it in the document.
Well, every year gets smaller because it's been on the page.
Yeah.
Do this.
Take a reduction out, yes. But I just made a few corrections since you saw it. Sure.
Once I lose this, I'll be like.
Put your reading glasses.
But it doesn't matter, but.
So distraction, so you give me everything I want.
Apparently, it's unreadable.
Yeah.
Look.
So I can print on bigger paper, but it's kind of, at what point is it really?
I feel like
Post for the wall.
whenever we're gonna go to a meeting with you, I need a magnifying glass.
Yes, so you see some of my charts. That's right. So, I mean, my budget's actually pretty simple. I mean, Kate can run through the numbers real quick. We are adjusting my revenues to meet actuals that we believe we can meet next year. We've taken a reduction, but in a computer system because we have a grant for 3 years.
Yeah.
So for 3 years, there's going to be a reduction of $7,000. But in 4 years, it's going to be increased to $15,000. Maybe we can do something then. My operating budget is approximately $17,940 after salaries. So we're pretty much confined to a very tight schedule. We reduced our car fleet to a hybrid and an EV, so we don't even use a lot of gas anymore. I don't really have a lot to say. The revenue things is a scary thing with the economy the way it's going. We're comfortable with our projections for next year. Next year, this time, we'd like to discuss the year following year. I don't want to say that's going to happen every year. Our average revenue is a little under $400,000 up to the last 2 years, where it's been a little over 800,000. I'm sorry.
And I'm looking, that's the bottom line on the bottom, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So, it's extraordinary. You can see it's not the norm. You can see it was a nice steady rise, $400,000.
Yeah.
And then the last 2 years, it's been a little over 8. So I don't want to say we're going to have it every year. I don't get to keep it anyway. So, so we're comfortable with the number we put in there this year. That shows the increase in revenues on Katie sheet. And that's it. Like I said, it's
So the one thing that I wanted to say about this is that, as Ed said, we thought about moving this budget up even as high as 600,000. But if you really look, we think that these last 2 years truly are a bubble. And we think the bubble is going to come back down to where it was previously. I mean, that's our best estimate. Now, when does that happen? Does it happen next year? Does it happen the year after? You know, it's hard to have visibility beyond a year, really.
Yeah,
So what we did is, in talking with Ed about it, and he felt comfortable after we talked about it, is we put revenues at 500,000, which is still 300,000 less than what we're gonna, 350,000 less than what we're gonna do this year. But next year is not this year, you know, the bubble's is gonna start tailing off. And you can speak to this, that what he was pointing out to me is that his revenues are not being driven by a large number of projects, it's being driven by a small number of very large projects. And so if you start losing one or two very large projects, you lose a lot of your revenue.
so if you dive into the chart, which you're not done, you'll see that the amount of permits, the amount of seals, the amount of inspections are all down about 8%, 10%. So the job, the workload,
The number
the number of those, but not the dollar amount of those.
is higher.
So we don't want to, I don't want you to have a false sense of security that that number is going to keep coming in year after year after year. But we're comfortable with next year's budget being the 500,000.
So really what we're looking at also is that if things keep going in this trajectory, and the economy cools off a bit, which the housing market cools off at some point. We're looking at 500,000 for the budget this year, but next year you may be looking at 450. And the year after, you may be looking at back down to 4, where we think will probably be our normal level. I'm not sure what normal is these days, but that's what you should have in your head, so that when we have this conversation next year and we're looking at decreasing our revenues, you can say you heard it already. So, but that's where it looks like we're going. So, but we can reevaluate next year. We'll look and see like what the housing market's like. You have some wild cards out there. You have
One extraordinary could fix it, and that's what's been fixing it.
Yeah, but you might have a $150,000 or $200,000 building permit fee walk through the door with a single project.
Yeah.
That can happen. And it will.
And it has.
It has. So those are the types of scale projects that we're getting right now, and who knows if that'll continue. The other wild card is if and when the townhomes are built. 3040 South Broadway. We think that project's resurrected again. They just got their reapprovals.
Yeah.
They're marketing it,
Okay.
but we don't know where it's going.
But we haven't, that 500 doesn't include that.
Yeah, no.
Because we didn't want to take that chance, because it's not produced anything we wanted, not your affordables. Not your parking spaces, it's just, yeah. So we didn't include that, so if that happens, that'll be extraordinary. The revenues will be a little higher.
It wouldn't necessarily happen in the budget year, it could be after that, if something happens anyway.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly, they've gotten their resident, their planning board approvals renewed. So it's a smoother sailing, but they have to sell it again, you have to find a buyer.
So by the time everything happens.
It could be another budget year.
Yeah. That makes
So we didn't want to include that
sense. Can't
in the extraordinary.
count.
It's still a net decrease of about $140,000.
It's an increase, we increased it this year.
No, I mean, the total budget for your department.
No, that's a decrease.
That's what I'm saying, it's a
Yeah,
decrease.
sorry, I thought you said increase.
No.
Oh, yeah, yes,
That's that 199.53 is the decrease in your budget from 20 this year to,
There's the expense increases are, the office assistants, the big ticket item.
yeah, we had moved that over.
And the office assistant, that's offset in my department, so it's kind of a wash. Yeah.
It's not an increase in the village budget, it's just an increase in my budget.
Yeah, so it's actually, if you had
office
that,
assistant, that's a computer program, right? Or is that a person?
No, that's Sarah.
Oh, that's
She's on computer program, she runs the place.
so if maybe you add that back, it's almost $170,000 decrease.
Yeah,
Yeah, true decrease, yeah.
yeah.
Except for the $400 increase in legal fees, which is a little troubling.
Seems excessive.
What did you do?
Seems excessive. That's like a 30 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's thought about it.
What is that?
Great. I mean, I don't have a lot of questions about this. I mean, I think the revenue is always the one. But we have heard for the last 4 years that it's going to decrease, but it does feel like it has to.
Yeah, if you look at this one, if you look the last 2 years, the permits and the COs and the inspections are all going up.
Yeah.
The permits and the COs this last cycle have gone down. Remember, all those numbers are calendar year, not budget year. That actually, this is a tool for me to do the state report. So it's, you know, you'll see a little difference in the revenues, but, yeah, so everything's down a little bit in this past year in 2022. So revenues didn't go down, but that's not, you know, and I think we'll definitely find the 500 next.
Okay.
But after that, we'll have to rebuild it.
Anything else from the building department? All right, well, you're free to go.
Thank you, Ed.
Or you can hang out.
Water.
Thank you.
Sewer, Mr. Englishby.
I would want to miss.
Hello, Ed, if you have questions for Jim, you can.
I have to do. Is it water and sewer, sewer and water? Whatever you want, starting at water.
Water comes take it, so.
Yeah, water always comes first. Nice with you, as always. Looks like we're looking at about 5% rate increase, which is kind of in line with the lower end of inflation.
Yes.
That does include our anticipated increase from the city. I always feel like they come out of the blue. Come out of the big word. Same with Greenberg. Yeah.
Like, last year they handed us a big bill that we didn't know about, so that's part of last year's budget.
So, so just to introduce this quickly, and so for some of you maybe that haven't gone through the water budget is actually surprisingly more complicated than you think. It's not a very big fund, you know, $2.5 million fund, but it's pretty complex in how it operates. So Jim's responsibility is primarily in the operating and maintenance part of the department. So he's the expense side of this, most of the expense side of this, but he's not involved in all of the complex agreements that we have for purchasing water from Greenberg and the costs and how those costs get passed through to us. He's certainly not responsible for collecting revenue and you know, setting the rates and all of that. So he's the operations person. So when we go through this, Jim will speak to what's changing on the operations side, and we'll speak to what's happening on the water purchase side. And both of them are equally important, but equally complex. So anyway, I just wanted to give you an overview so you understood what you're looking at and who's responsible for what. If you ask Jim how much it's going to cost to buy water next year, he's not going to know.
Nobody does.
And no one's going to know how to replace a pipe. So besides him. So
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to look at this is look at the expenses first, because the revenue kind of is the missing puzzle piece after we take all those changes into effect. So the insurance increase of 2,700 is just due to our general liability insurance increases that are happening across the board. The MTA payroll tax increase is a result of salary increases, and the longevity increase is more reflective of what our current year actuals will end up being. The contingency increase number is 12,400 greater this year because we have to put the salary increases in this line because the contract isn't settled yet. Personnel services, that increase is just reflective of the current year salaries. The professional fee increase of $7,020. That includes an increase of $6,020 for software meter reading and $1,000. So Jim will talk about that one.
So the metering software we currently use is, is PC based. So they're going to be changing into a cloud-based system. We're going to be able to read it with tablets instead of now we have to buy these interrogators, they're called. Each one's about $8,000. So we get rid of that cost. I have to buy a bell clip reader, which is around $6,000, but I could take that out of my operating budget. So the $6,000 is for the new software and the initial startup. And then going forward, it will be a little bit cheaper, I think around $3,500 a year instead of the initial $6,000.
And then the $1,000 in billing software fees is just the software that we use. They're increasing the maintenance cost on that. Then we have the New York City excess charges, which is very difficult to project, but we based it off of current year actuals and kind of projected it out for the rest of the year.
We jump over that one and Rumbrook and purchase from Greenberg just for now.
Okay,
You know what I mean? So it's kind of a whole package. that we talked about.
okay.
So go there.
So then personnel services reflective of current year salaries, 11,372. Supplies cost, the water department's requesting a $10,000 increase.
Yeah, essentially, fire hydrants used to be $2,500, now they're 5,000 a piece, so. Parts are getting more expensive, pipes more expensive, brass is more expensive. So in order to keep up with the supply and you know, have enough supplies on the shelf, we definitely need more money in that line. We've lucked out this year with water main breaks, we've only had 4 compared to 23 last year, so that's a good thing.
And then also in professional fees, there's a request for an increase of 15,500, which is made up of a $10,000 emergency services increase plus a $5,500 backflow program.
So prices go up, we have a new contractor, just the cost of doing business is getting a little more expensive. So we need, you know, a little more money for the emergency services, water main breaks and sewer problems. Then the backflow program, currently I administer the backflow program. Every month I have to send letters out to the residents for the month. They have to send the letters back, then I have to file them. You have to keep up with them. This program basically does all that for us. So I probably spend, I don't know, 7 or 8 hours a month just working on the backflow program. So what happens is they test the backflow, they send it to the company, they file it, and the only time we get really involved in it is when they don't answer the letters that they send out. So it kind of just cuts back on the amount of time I have to take care of it and makes it a little more organized.
And then the remaining increases are the state retirement due to rates, $9,100, Social Security of $5,000, workers' compensation is going down by $8,500, hospital and medical insurance an increase of $18,000, ban principal an increase of $3,000, ban interest an increase of $62,942. And transfers to debt service, which is the serial bond piece, a decrease of $3,729.
Yeah, so did you have any questions for Jim, by the way? I mean, not that he's leaving, but if you have any questions about that particularly, feel free. So the next part of this is really to describe the relationship of how we purchase our water that is obviously sold to our customers. We have an interconnection with the town of Greenberg. We no longer draw water directly from any New York City aqueducts. We used to draw it from the New Croton Aqueduct, but that's been put out of service, I think, right? So long ago, 30 plus years ago, there was a project to build a pump station in Rumbrook Park in Greenberg, which would pull water from the Catskill Aqueduct and serve both communities, Greenberg and Irvington, and it would be done through a tie line. That's the relationship we have right now. Greenberg operates that pump station. They have a full separate accounting of that pump station in its own little fund. And we get billed based upon percentage allocation of costs that run through that pump station. So most of the costs are split 50-50. Costs such as the actual purchasing of the water from New York City or electricity costs or chemical costs to treat the water. Those things are done and allocated to us based upon the amount of usage of that pump station that we use as a percentage of the overall usage of the pump station. So I think this past year, we used about 40% of the water from Rumbrook, and Greenberg used 60%. So those particular costs were allocated accordingly. So the actual mechanics of this are that the water gets billed to us on a monthly basis by Greenberg, but it's done at a rate which is really an estimated rate, because they don't really know what their full costs are going to be for the upcoming year. We pay every month. By the end of the year, the actual final costs are determined. The actual ratios of who used what is determined. And then they take a look at how much we've paid, and there's a true up of that number. So in some years, I don't remember there being too many credits back to us, but in some years it might be a $15,000 payment, in other years it might be $150,000, depending on how unusual the summer usage patterns, the water usage patterns are, especially in the summer. If it's a dry summer, it changes how much the water is used. It's a wet summer, it's less. So all those factors come into play. And what it means is that we actually don't. Greenberg hasn't sent us the bill for last year. We've been poking them to get us the number. They usually get it to us in February. We have an estimate of what we think it's going to be. And so the budgets that you see here are based upon what that estimate is. It could change between now and the next time we talk to you and try to finalize this budget. But that's one of the moving pieces in this whole equation. The other side of it, the other kind of moving piece is one of the items that Katie jumped over on the way down here was called the New York City excess charges. So New York City, when they sell water to their upstate customers, and the upstate customers are the municipalities like us in Greenberg, they allow us to buy water from them, but only a fixed amount. And when we go over that fixed amount, they charge us a rate that's considerably higher. So the way they figure out the amount that we're allowed to take is a function of our population. And it's a function of the amount of usage per capita that a New York City customer uses throughout a year. So they have a calculation, and maybe they determine that it's X number of gallons per year that a typical average New York City customer, and that's important because we're not New York City customers up here. We have lawns and pools and all that stuff. So, but that's the allocation. They take the amount of an average person in New York City uses, multiplied by our population. That's how much we're allowed to use on any given month. And it changes every month. When we go over that amount, we get an extra bill. So we don't, we can't anticipate ahead of time whether we're going to get that extra bill. If it's a hot, dry summer, chances are we're going to be watering lawns a lot more than people are watering lawns in New York City. There probably aren't as many big lawns in New York City. So when it's a wet summer, then the dynamic changes again. So again, the numbers that you see here were based upon last year. And what we've developed over the years is we've developed a rate structure that tries to respond to that changing dynamic of excess charges being introduced and some of those unknowns. Our rate structure is such that any household that gets a quarterly bill can use up to 100 units of water. So that's 100 cubic feet, or however many gallons that is.
1 unit, 748 gallons.
Right. So they're allowed to times 100 times 100. So that's the allotment. When people go over that, and they get billed that portion at the base rate, when they go over that, they get billed at a rate that's approximately 2.5 times what the base rate is. And that number is probably shocking for people that water their lawn and didn't pay attention to it. but it responds to this dynamic that, and it puts the charges on the people that are using the water in excess of what a typical customer would use. So that's the philosophy behind it. It seems to work. The fund's been in balance over the years. But I think that's as best I can explain. I can explain the relationship. So,
So I'm embarrassed to say I've never looked at my water bill. But when a resident gets a water bill, does it say this is your base amount and this is how much you've gone over and these are your additional fees over and above the base? Or does it just give them a single usage number that can tell them that's what they are?
I don't know what the new billing system is.
I think it would be broken out by line because there's different rates associated with each one. I'm not 100% sure,
Check on
but we'll double check.
I'm just curious,
Yeah.
you know, what people know they're going over, so that could perhaps change behavior.
Yeah.
They see.
We do get a lot of calls when when it looks high.
And we do have a process for breaking up when there's multiple households in a single that are feeding off of a single meter. So let's say a 3-family house that all comes through a single meter. They're allowed to use 300 units.
Right.
We have a process for handling that. But it's yeah, so that's the rate structure. And those are the dynamics. Now, the other part of this, and we did have this conversation last year. I'll refresh your memory. There was a pretty large construction maintenance project that Greenberg undertook. They undertook it back in 2016 thereabouts. They borrowed a fair amount of money to do the project, which was to renovate. I couldn't explain the technical side of it. Jimmy probably could, but it was to renovate the Rumbrook pump station. So we are responsible for half of that project. They did not bill us that debt service since 2016, and late a year ago, say late 21, they came to us and alerted us to the fact that they hadn't billed us for it, and they now have to catch up. They've allowed us to spread the part that we missed over the upcoming payments. But we had to introduce in this year's budget an extra $95,000 of debt service. That's going to flow through the Rumbrook pump station billing when we get it. We think we've accounted for that, you know, in what these projections are, but this rate is somewhat higher because of that introduction of new debt service, which again, you probably don't remember this. No, we did have this conversation last year.
I remember.
Yeah, so and we ended up raising our rates last year somewhat, but not to cover the entire thing. So we did rely on some use of fund balance. And when the year went on and the type of summer that we had with water usage, we didn't end up using really much of that fund balance that we planned on using. So we're now suggesting to reappropriate some of that fund balance to further offset that new debt service and try to keep the rate in this 5% range, which, as you said, I don't want to call it the going rate, but it's
pretty close.
Yeah, but it could have been 7 or 8%.
Yeah.
You know, depending on how things were going. So. Yeah.
So I guess I'll just make two things. One historical point. We've only had a fund surplus, fund balance, I should say, for about the last 4 years.
Yeah, yes.
We had a large deficit.
Yes.
When I first got on the board back in 2009, it was in millions of over
1.8.
yeah, 1.8. It was almost millions of dollars, which we've gone the other way. I mean, it was literally a black mark on all of our finances, even though we still were in the black. If you added all of our balances together, it just kind of, you know, especially the rating agencies just didn't like it. What happened was we just basically didn't increase rates for a couple of decades. So we had this big deficit in that one fund. So that's just a little history lesson. And then as far as using the surplus, to me, the way I always view surplus is that is people's money that we overcharged in the past, basically, especially with the water budget. We're just trying to guesstimate. We've said all the moving pieces you talked about. if we can give some of it back that we were wrong in previous years to help smooth this year, it makes sense to me. So I don't have any problem using the surplus. It's just nice that we actually have some to be able to use. So.
Yeah, it's. We wouldn't have had to use any if it wasn't really for the introduction of that.
Right.
Service, but
Thanks a lot, Greenberg.
yeah, it's better to smooth it out than not, so.
Plus, while paying off that debt, we did major renovations to tanks and pump stations, so we were still able to improve the system and make some money. So,
Right. Good point.
Not germane to the budget, I don't think, but where are we with the removal by the Sawmill Parkway, the removal of that old pump?
we're still dealing with the DEC, DEP, I mean, we're trying to figure out the logistics of getting rid of the transformer. Doug Hahn's working with, is our engineer on that project, so he's working with the DEP. It's been kind of slow going. We've been answering comments. I think we're finally got the comments pretty much wrapped up.
Yeah, we're struggling right now with needing to coordinate with DOT. Because we think we need to remove the transformer and the pumps, I think is the heavier part.
The transformer's not as hard because we could probably use an excavator, but the pumps themselves go down into the shaft of the aqueduct. So we'll probably need a crane. So getting a crane in there is gonna be tough. Because the way that you get in there is you go past this piece of a guardrail and then you back in against traffic, so. It's gonna be
Those are
some
those
coordination
engineering
over
things that
there.
I'm always like, wow, okay.
I remember the first time you told us about that, I was like.
I brought Larry there a couple times.
Yeah, I try to go out there as little as possible.
Right,
Right,
It's a scary spot.
it's gonna be a somewhat of a tough project just because of the weather.
But let's put it this way, put this in context, this isn't a project that we wanted to do. It was the DEP, we actually lease the land that it exists on, it's DEP land, New York City DEP. They came to us and said, oh, you're not using your pump anymore, we need to remove it, we're not renewing the permit. They did this before COVID, they did this back in 2018 or something, 2019. So we've been working diligently on it, but, and they know we're working diligently on it. But they're not pushing, they're not speeding up the process either. They have a lot of approvals along the way that took a long time. So we're all working on it. We have money set aside. We don't, frankly, I don't know if it's enough anymore. So we're going to deal with that at some point. But now that we are getting closer. So that's the best I can summarize.
They basically want it back to where like it was. So trees planted, dirt is gonna be brought in, put over the shaft's gonna be capped. All the equipment needs to be pulled out, lead abatement, asbestos abatement. So PCB abatement. I think we're okay on the PCB so far from the
That's
rest.
it's kind of essence.
Yeah. But basically, we have to take the transformer up and get it up to the parkway where their truck is gonna be and load it onto their truck, so. That's where the crane is probably gonna come in and.
Anything else? Otherwise,
So the other thing, and
sewer.
again, not specific to the operating budget, but on capital budget. We have two projects that we would like to get done, and then a third on the way after that. So Mountain Road and River Road. And yeah, I mean, we went out to bid. Or we started to go out to bid on the Mountain Road project. Everything's designed and approved and the money's set aside. And the cost of the material in those quantities is just, and the delivery time.
Well, they even get them, it takes it from, if we ordered it today, it would take a year. So let's say it's $1,000 for a piece of pipe. We wouldn't get that price, we'd get the price for a year from now. So we can't even project our costs or the material costs because they're not guaranteeing any prices.
So
And to find, we need about 5,000 feet of 8-inch pipe and it's gonna take over a year to get. And they don't even guarantee the prices, so that makes it hard for us to bid it out. Because they're throwing such padding in to the costs,
Right for them.
So that project's on hold on Mountain Road and the project here on River Road, right, this road right here, is on hold for the same reason. So.
And then Erie Street, we want Erie and Langdon, we wanted to replace, that's getting surveys and getting shovel ready, but then again, it's pipe, another 1,500 feet of pipe. Then there's maple and oak, which I'm looking at because we've had, last year, I think we had 4 breaks on maple and this year we had 1. So, we want to replace stuff and fix stuff, but the costs are pretty ridiculous right now.
Supply chain.
Yeah, hopefully it gets better.
Any other questions or?
Sewer's almost too small to talk about.
Yeah, sewer, there's no expense increases that are really controllable. It's mainly increases to the insurance, the salary increases, retirement, the workers' comp decrease, life insurance, and our medical insurance. So in order to keep this rate increase level at the 5%, same as water, we would need to appropriate $4,765 of fund balance. And my projection for fund balance at the end of this year is that it'll end up around $11,000. So it's using close to half of that.
It's pretty small, fun, so.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at your bill, it's the sewer charges are a fraction of the water charges. I mean, they're based on water usage, but they're just, it's still a big factor.
52 cents. Great.
I don't know, other than to, thank you and the department for, doing a great job, and every time there's a break, you guys do a great job, and I think it's like breaks have been down a little bit, so maybe the maintenance things are helping.
That wasn't cold this year. That's true. Last year was really cold. A lot of breaks this year, not so many. We've been having some breaks up on Mountain Road that have been hard to find. You have Concrete Road, you have the Parkway. So the way we find those is through listening with a device, which you can hear airplanes going over. So even going out there at 2 o'clock in the morning and trying to listen, it's very hard. So I've been calling in leak detection. We found 3 leaks. So that should decrease, the amount of water we're using up there. But that was part of the project that I want to get accomplished, because when we do have breaks that we can't find, you lose a lot of money up there. And there's a lot of repairs on that road. And it's concrete also. So it's not simple just to dig a hole. You got to kind of do an educated guess and then dig and hope it's there. So it's quite expensive. And then I don't know if you saw the machine down here on the side of the road coming into the park. We had a sewer problem here. So basically we took over the sewer from Burnham, I guess, years ago. So we're installing a new manhole down here because we were having problems jetting this line. We had a backup, and it goes underneath the Metro North tracks, which is scary when you're sticking your jet in there. So we're installing a manhole here, and then we're going to do one on the other side. So we're able to jet underneath the track safely and clear the line properly here, because you're actually supposed to jet against the clog, not with the clog. And that's what we had to do here. So there was no manholes for 379 feet. So now we're going to break it up, because this is the business district down here, and we're going to be redoing the water, so we might as well have a proper way to clean the sewer and maintain it here. So,
Hard to argue against that.
That makes sense.
right. Tell you the truth, I don't like dealing with sewer too much.
You're a water man. Great. Well, we really appreciate it as always. And, we have great confidence in you and your team. So
Thank you, appreciate it.
We don't get to talk to you enough. So thanks very
Thanks,
much.
Jeff.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Safe home.
Thank you.
So before you go on. I know you want to stay here all night.
Yeah.
Did you want to?
Yes, so this 2-pager kind of gives a summary of where we are now with all the department requests, just to kind of put everything into perspective. So the second page shows last year's tax levy And then these are all of the increases and decreases so far, the requests. We haven't, I mean, it include Parks and Recs and DPW, which will still possibly change before the next meeting. And there's other items, that will change too, but these are the main things. So as of now, in order to be in compliance with the tax cap, we still have a difference of about $60,000.
So we're still working on it. That our goal, as I think we said early on, our goal is to at least get a budget to you that is compliant with the tax cap. Whether that's where you want to end up or not is for you to decide, but we felt that was at least our responsibility to get a budget like that. So that's what we're working towards. We're not quite there yet. But also note that it does include some of the requested ads that you've heard from some of the departments. So, you know, if there's some decision making on your part, that can happen to get us to where we need to be, or even beyond. So, anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that we're not quite there, but that's where we are today. And
Can I just
word
ask
on-
what,
go ahead, yeah.
what transfers library means?
So the library fund is funded by the general fund, so whatever. It's kind of the difference between the revenues and expenses, so the impact of their requests would be taken care of by the transfer line.
Yeah, the mechanics of it, right, I mean, they don't have very many revenues, like, you know, book fines, you know. Right. But whatever revenues they do have offset their expenses, and the difference by the general fund will transfer. Okay. So effectively, the public library is funded almost entirely by tax dollars. So one word on the top page. And this one's important because it's the difference in the way the assessments are handled right now is so pronounced that really needs an explanation. So Katie included two columns here. Let's focus on the last column right now, which is the current request column. So that column equates to the tax levy that you saw on this second page. So even though we're presenting you a budget that is not quite tax cap compliant, but close, it still results in a tax rate decrease of 1.3%. So why that happens is because Greenberg updates their assessment roll on a much more regular basis now. And so the assessment roll, when we got the roll, if you look at the assessed valuation line, so it's the 2022-23 column, the assessed valuation is 1.9 billion. The current request column, the last column is over 2 million. That's a 6.7% increase, I think it was 6.7% increase. So now the question is, was all of that because of new construction, or was all of that because values went up? And how much of that is because values went up? Because it's important to know how much of it is due to value change and how much is due to construction, because let's say all of it was due to value change. Let's say everyone's property theoretically went up by 6.7% in value. If you increased your levy, the amount of taxes that you're going to be collecting by 6.7%, everyone's bill would stay flat. Sorry, the rate would stay flat, but everyone's bill would go up by 6.7% because everyone's assessments have gone up. That makes sense? Or put it another way. If you didn't collect a single dollar extra of tax levy, of tax money, and the assessed values went up by 6.7%, your tax rate should go down by 6.7%, so that the person's bill would stay at zero, right? So So seeing that you're compliant with a 2% tax cap, which is really not quite 2%, it's a little bit higher than that. Seeing that you're compliant with a tax cap doesn't mean that your rate's gonna go up by 2% or 3% or 4%. In this case, it's actually going down. So it's a long-winded explanation of saying that gone are the days of budgeting to the tax rate. Because in the past, Greenberg didn't adjust the values on the assessment roll, so no one's values went up. The only people that went up were people that had new construction, additions or whatever, renovations, whatever.
So can we divide that out?
Right, so we've the best we can divide it is that the state is telling us through numbers that get reported to them by the assessor's office, the state is telling us that it's about 1.4%, I think, whatever that.
Yeah, 1.4.
Roughly 1.4% of that 6.7 is due to new construction or additions or whatever. The rest of it is value change. So the decrease of 1 point whatever that's shown here, everyone's value is going to be going up on average by 4 point whatever the difference is in those two numbers. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but you know, there's a breakout, and so the amount that's due to the value change is what everyone's assessments are going to be going up. But the tax rate's only going down by 1 point something. So there's so you really do have an increase in here, which you expect because you're at the top of your tax cap. You're at even above the top right now. So you are going to get a tax increase, even though the percentage of the rate is going down.
Yeah, because it's a lower percent of a higher number. I get it.
Yeah. So.
But we, in a way. Never mind. No, I mean, to some extent, we can't control what values are, right? So, you know.
No, exactly.
You know.
Right, and you can't control the timing of when Greenberg updates their values. It's just that this year, it was so pronounced that you have to do this breakout, you know, in your plan. In part of this discussion, you have to do that breakout so you really know what the impact is for your residents. So the safer, in all honesty, the safer way to look at it is, I think, taking a look at your increase in tax levy. So I don't know that it's necessarily shown. So the increase in tax levy, I don't know, we don't have a percentage of this, but so on that second page, right now we're showing a tax levy increase of 818,000. So if we take that, again, just real quick, if we take the 818,000 as a percentage of the original levy, which is 15,265,000 at the top of the page, you know, that's 5.3% is your levy. Your levy is going up 5.3% as currently shows right now. So, but the tax rate's only going down by 1 point, whatever. So the residents are seeing a good portion of that as a tax rate increase, not tax rate increase, tax amount increase from their bill. Does that help a little bit? Yeah, I mean, we'll discuss it in with more detailed numbers when all of these targets stop moving. I mean, we don't have the final number for Greenberg, by the way. We're waiting, I think, probably tomorrow is the date that they usually cut off and give us a final number. So the assessment number from Greenberg is still just an estimated number. It could go down from there a little bit. But when all of this stops moving, we'll make sure that we have the right numbers together to discuss this, but at least you heard about it, because it has to beg the question when you look at a budget that's not even tax cap compliant, and yet your rate's going down.
Yeah.
So we didn't want you to walk out of here thinking that our rate's going down. We're doing a great job.
We're safe,
By
right?
the way, yeah, no, it's good. We're doing a good job, but it's good. You know, it's not that good. So anyway. Okay, that was it. You want the soapbox? We talked about it today, Katie and I, it was just, you just had to, you had to understand it.
No, very helpful. It's just strange, I mean, the fact that it went up that much is. Yeah, is the anomaly. It's usually within a couple,
Yeah, I don't know the mechanics of how often they do it. I know that they do, they try to do annual adjustments, especially if the market's moving rapidly. The housing market, and I think that was part of it. I don't think this is because of. I think they did a full reevaluation in 21. It's possible that a good portion of this is because of the actual reevaluation.
Yeah.
You know, they do it every 5 years. 2016 and 2021.
yeah, it's
So
probably the jump.
it could
I
be,
guess.
yeah. So,
Modification of contract 2016-24 with the Fiona Company for grant writing services.
So this is really just what it says. Fiona has been our grant writer for a number of years. She has not increased her rate in, I think at least 3 years, at least, yeah, it was about 3 years. So she proposed a new rate. I fully support her getting every dollar she asked for. Hopefully she won't listen to this meeting. She's been doing great work, as you know. So I don't even have to outline the number of grants that we've received. Not the least of which is the most recent, which is the Harriman Road culvert project that we received a significant amount of money on. So.
And what's the percentage increase, do you know? Okay.
Oh, is she coming from, I'm sorry. Thank you. Did I attach your correspondence? Hold on a second. I'll get you the number.
Assuming if she's doubling it, then I might.
No, it's
Proud.
not. No,
I mean, she is doing great work, but
yeah, I apologize. I think she said 125 now, so it's 125 to 140.
still a good deal.
Yeah.
We have any questions? Otherwise, I'll start my reading. President trustees previously approved contract 2016-24 with the Fiona Company for grant writing services and resolved. Board of Trustees approves the modification in contract 2016-24, increased the hourly rate to $240 effective March 1st, 2023. Doing all of the terms and conditions of the original contract unchanged and further resolved to authorize the village administrator to execute said modified contract. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? All right. Next up is authorization to approve change order number 1 for the Station Road culvert project.
So, yeah, so actually, this is not a change to the underlying culvert project itself. We were being opportunistic by using the contractor's tree company that had to come into the Station Road Park playground site to do tree work for the culvert project. We were opportunistic and took down a very hazardous tree that's actually located, is it up on where the middle memorial is? Or it's behind the pump house on Station Road, the water pump house.
Correct.
Very hazardous tree. It basically overhangs the pump house and very difficult to get equipment in there. We have to do it when we actually put the bridge back.
The bridge needs to be upgraded before they can take a piece of equipment over it that could get that tree down.
So we're in a long convoluted way, we're saving money by using this contractor's tree company because they're gonna be mobilized and out there already. And it's a very hazardous tree. So the amount that's here is, again, not attributed directly to this project, but it's lumped onto this contract. So that's the mechanics of it. Ordinarily, we would have handled this with our own contractor. You would have never heard about this at this level, you know what I mean? But we needed to add it to this contract because it makes most
So
sense.
we did try with our own contractor. He couldn't figure out how to get it down. For the same reason, he couldn't get over the bridge.
So this will happen when the repair is done to the bridge.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's dependent on that.
Result of approved change order number with Bradhurst Site Construction Corp. with a total amount of $5,725.70. The Station Road Culvert Project, authorize the village administrator to execute said change order. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is filling permit.
Yeah, so this is a it's a commercial, if I'm not mistaken, but this is a fairly straightforward one. The only complexity is that it's on Main Street. The police chief has been in direct contact with the film company. He's satisfied that their work, some of it may spill out onto the sidewalk, but it's not going to stop traffic on Main Street or, you know, anything like that. It's nothing that his officers can't handle, and they'll be hired to oversee, you know, the actual day of filming. Speaking of which, we did hear earlier today that they may not be filming on this particular day. It may be pushed off by a few days or a week. I don't actually know yet. But when they do, they'll be ready for it. So if you're satisfied with a film permit like this, knowing that the police department's involved and they're comfortable with it, we might change the date on this to a date to be determined, or some change the resolution somewhat. I literally heard that today, so
Where on Main Street?
right in front of the pizzeria, 106 Main Street.
7 to block traffic, I'm not a big issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, pedestrians, the police will be there to make sure that there's safe passage past them, if it even blocks the sidewalk at all.
It's a school day, so Main Street School will be coming in and out, because it gets nuts right there.
Yeah, and that's why they're gonna handle that. I asked the chief to address all of those issues and timing and making sure vehicles are not interfering with any sort of school arrival or departure.
I'll just make it a date to be announced, or to be determined on or around March 7th.
Yeah,
Resolved to approve a filming permit for Epoch Media Group LLC to film at Irvington Pizza located 106 Main Street, Irvington, New York on March 7th, 2023, on or about that date from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. with permit fee of $1,000. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Reports of boards, standing committees, and trustee liaison reports. We'll start with you, Larry.
Don't have anything, so I thank Ed for this great report from over the years. I don't think I can summarize it, but yeah, nothing else. It's been
Old Larry?
I'll defer to Mr. Archino.
I'll save everything for Monday night.
Perfect. That's great.
get to do this again.
Just start one.
Just me. Just reports of the DPW and the water department. And the great work that they- I'll say that we know what good work they do.
And Mitch.
It's late, so I'll just say, please go to the library website and see all the great programs they're doing. And as for the theater is doing their annual short play fest, and it's free. It's virtual from March 18th to March 26th. You can just go to the website and register, and they're doing an in-person event at Mercy College on March 25th at 2 p.m. also free. And you can see live readings of 4 plays by actors, and again, it's free. So
Is it free?
Yeah, how much
it
is
is- the cost is free. So it's really an amazing deal. So if you're around.
Wait, are they gonna pay us?
Any coupons available?
At breaking point.
I get a 2-for-1.
Village administrators report.
So I don't really have a report, but I do want to congratulate the board on a very nice gathering earlier this evening, dedication ceremony. Want to thank Joe and his department for the support. And it was, couldn't have done it without his department, frankly. And well done.
Thank you, Larry, for putting all
Joe
together.
went for
Joe,
helping
for helping.
moving the meeting here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is just an added wrinkle in the whole night.
But Larry pulled this all together in about a month, I'd say. Is that a fair thing to say? And it's getting Joe involved. Thank you so much for backing him up. And yeah, it's really amazing because it was really beautiful, and to be on such short notice, you really came through. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I got good answers from the board along the way, so that's why it happened.
It was a good night for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Village clerk treasurer's report.
The only thing from me is we got the code book update, so I'll be sending out an email asking everyone to bring their binders in, and then we'll replace the pages and then send them back.
And no village attorney's report, no public comment, except if Joe wants to say something on behalf of the public. Review of action items. I don't have anything. I'll make a motion to adjourn and thank everyone again for a wonderful ceremony.